Hey guys, so YCS Indianapolis 2023 just wrapped up and there's a lot we can learn from that. So I want to go over the results a little bit and talk about what it means for the meta going forward, both from a competitive standpoint, a casual standpoint, and kind of the mid-tier competitive standpoint. And that's kind of like where I stand. I go to regionals, I would go to YCS if it's convenient, but I'm not going to fly all over the country for the YCS. Yeah, let's talk about the results. Across the board, stuff that surprised me, stuff that didn't surprise me, and kind of what it means going forward for all levels of play, okay? Let's start from the very top. So the top two were both Sinful Spoils Rescue Ace decks. Yeah, the Sinful Spoils Rescue Ace deck kind of solidified itself in the new top tier, okay? And it was one of the decks that I expected to top or do very well. I put out a poll, I think on Friday, on what decks people thought would win this event, and the options I gave were Rescue Ace with the Bellstar engine, Tearlament, Unchained, and then Combo, which I included Mannadium, Rika, or Infernoble, or like an other option. What I did not include was Pearly. I really didn't think Pearly had any shot, but it did get one of the top 4 spots and actually had the second most representation in the top 32, which is pretty awesome, okay? Because I thought Pearly, I kind of wrote it off a little bit. I didn't think it's that great or could compete with some of these other decks that were topping, but hey, it proved me wrong, and there were actually 4 Pearlies in the top 32, including one in the top 4. So that's really cool. And something else that we can take away while looking at this, I want to bring up a few points, and I'll kind of bring them all together in a little bit, but how diverse this meta is. In the top 32 decks, we had 14 different decks. We had Adventure Sprite, Tri-Brigade Sprite, Exo Sister, Rescue Ace, Rika, Sun Avalon, Flamanderies, Vanquish Soul, Horus Bestial, Runic, Labyrinth, Mannadium, Unchained, Tear, and Pearly. This could be taken a lot of different ways based on how competitive you are. So we saw some of the more competitive players kind of complaining about this diversity. We saw Pac tweet out that this is the worst format of all time. A little bit of hyperbole there, but I can see that from a competitive player's standpoint. It's when the format is just so diverse, it's very hard to prepare a deck. It's very hard to prepare non-engine. Like, there's no non-engine that covers all 15 decks. It's very hard to anticipate what you're going to be playing against, what you have to kind of defend yourself from. Like, if you put up a turn 1 board, what kind of decks do I build that board for? Like, it's kind of variance. If you have kind of 2 options for your end board, and one option A beats these 5 decks, and option B beats these 5 decks, and you're going blind into a matchup, especially in the Swiss rounds where you don't know what your opponent is playing. In Top Cut, you probably know, but in the Swiss, you don't know. It's very hard to win consistently, I'll say. And, it's kind of variance on what deck you're playing against, and do they draw the out to your board if you make the right board for them or make the wrong board for them, and so forth. And that's kind of what happened to Pac in this tournament, it appears, based on his Twitter feed. And then also some other more competitive players as well probably didn't do as well as they were hoping to in this particular tournament. I think that lends, the reasoning for that is just the diversity of this format. Okay, so from a competitive standpoint, yeah, it's difficult. But from a mid-tier competitive standpoint and from a casual standpoint, this is kind of nice. This means you can kind of play whatever deck you want and have a shot. Like, if you want to bring Marincess to a YCS, you could be one of these top 14 decks. Like, there's a case to be made that Marincess is in the top 14 decks of the format, okay? And with that being said, like, try whatever you want this format, honestly. If you have a deck that you've been, like, holding off that's kind of been lousy, pull it out again. Like, give it a go, because it appears that pretty much anything can win. And the decks that have the best chance, or that are going to have the best representation, are decks whose engines, like in-engine, is strong enough to go first or second. I think that's really the key to what decks we're going to see in Top Cuts, both from this event and at smaller events like regionals. And if we look at Sinful Spoils Rescue Ace, if we look at Pearly, we look at Tear, we look at Unchained, all of those decks are solid, going first or second. Like, their engines put up such a good going first board, but they can also play through non-engine going second. And I think because the format is so diverse, the decks that depend more on in-engine stuff are going to do better. And we saw in the finals of YCS Indy, the player who went second in game 1 actually won the game because they were able to play through a full Rescue Ace board with their own engine. And decks that can do that are the ones that are going to have the best shot. Contrast that with stuff like Chimera Branded. Chimera Branded, very good at going first uninterrupted. But going second into any interruption is going to have a hard time. And that's why I think we didn't see any Chimera Branded in the top 32 or even regular Branded in the top 32. Those decks are just not good enough at going second to compete. And that's kind of what I thought was the case with Mannadium. And I am very surprised. This is where I'll talk about Mannadium a little bit. I was very surprised to see the representation of Mannadium in Top Cut. One of the 2 Mannadium decks made top 4, and that was Triff. And then the other Mannadium deck was Hani Jawari, another high-tier player. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the competitive scene that much, but Hani frequently tops YCSs. He even won a YCS, I think, this year or last year or something. But yeah, those 2 players were on Mannadium and did very well. And I thought Mannadium was kind of a glass cannon deck that if you go first, you win, and if you go second, you lose. And those kind of decks just do not do well in large tournaments because chances are you're going to have to go second enough times where you're going to lose a couple matches, and that's just not good. But these guys were able to pull it off, and I'm kind of excited to see Mannadium being represented in the Top Cut here. So that's pretty cool. Let's look at some of these other decks. Some dude topped with Tri-Brigade Sprite. I need to see that list, man. I need to see that list. I'm very excited that Tri-Brigade Sprite had any kind of play whatsoever. I was very surprised about that. Vanquished Soul had less of a representation than I was hoping for. As a future Vanquished Soul player, spoiler alert for the channel, I'm getting a Vanquished Soul deck coming soon. I'm very surprised that Vanquished Soul only saw 1 deck after it got second place last YCS, and it got new support in Yugioh Long. So I thought we would see a little bit more Vanquished Soul, but nope, just the 1 slot. So we'll see how that deck does going forward. I'm going to keep a particular close eye on that deck just because of my own personal interest in it, obviously, because I'm going to play it shortly. But yeah, Runic, we saw, let's see, only one Runic deck. I don't know if it was pure Runic or Runic Sprite, Runic for Hire, whatever. Doesn't say here in this chart, so I'm gonna have to wait to see that. Labyrinth, only one deck. Mannadium 2, Unchained 2, Tier 3, and Pearly 4. Okay, Pearly I personally wrote off. I thought Pearly had no shot anymore. I thought it was kind of like a tier below stuff like Sinful Spoils, Rescue Ace, Tier Element, and Unchained, but proved me wrong. And I think it's just its resilience, its ability to go second, and I think a few players were playing Dimension Shifter in Pearly. Like, it was worth playing, even though Shifter hurts Pearly a little bit, it was so good against the rest of the field that it was worth playing in the Pearly deck. And if you are playing a matchup that Shifter is not good against, well, then fine, you just discard it with one of your spell cards. So, yeah, I kind of like that transition for Pearly. It's kind of like how we saw Sprite start playing Shifter back in Tier Element format to have any kind of chance. So that's kind of a cool adjustment. And I was happy to see Pearly kind of make a little bit of a comeback after a little bit of poor performances in the past couple YCSs. Other than that, besides the general just diversity of this format, it's kind of cool. I kind of like this field and so forth. Now let's talk about Age of Overlord a little bit. So we had 3 major things coming out of Age of Overlord. We had the Sinful Spoils engine, we have the Horus engine, and then we have SP Little Knight. Okay? Let's start with the Sinful Spoils. Okay, so we have 11 decks here that are Sinful Spoils Rescue Ace, plus 1 Rescue Ace deck that doesn't specify Sinful Spoils, but I bet it probably plays it anyway. So 11 or 12 decks play Sinful Spoils in this top 32. And I think this is the better of the 2 engines between Spoils and Horus. Okay? Horus, we only see 1 deck in the top 32 that plays it, unless these names are not accurate. I don't know if any of the Tier Limits decks played it, but I doubt it. Okay, so we had the Horus Bastille deck. Horus is kind of a glass cannon engine, by which I mean, like, you either resolve it and win, or you get stopped and lose immediately. It's very similar to Branded, where Branded Fusion, if it resolves, you probably win. And if it gets ashed, you probably lose. Okay? And just the cost of getting ashed on Imseti discard to search the sarcophagus is too high. Like, if you get ashed on that, you're down to 3 cards left. Okay? And you probably lose that game. And because of that, in large tournaments like this, YCSs, where you have 11 rounds of Swiss, where you need to not get ashed on Imseti, chances are you're going to get ashed a couple times. And you're probably going to lose those games solely due to ash. And that being said, you're going to lose 2 or 3 matches because of that. And if you do that, you're out of top cut. Contrast that with locals and regionals, where you only have 4 rounds in locals, or you only have 8 rounds at regionals. You might get through. You might make it to top cut, even if you get ashed on Imseti. And Horus is going to have much better representation, in my opinion, my prediction. It's going to have much better representation in locals and regionals than it will in YCSs. And I just caution you to not take regionals results or locals results where people are like, oh my god, Horus is amazing, and you go out and buy the whole Horus engine and then you get smoked at a YCS. I caution you, because it's so glass cannon that in these large tournaments where you're playing 11 rounds of Swiss and cut to top 32 or cut to top 64, like, based on just statistics, you're gonna lose too many matches to Horus regularly. Like, you're gonna lose, like, there's a high probability that you lose matches due to your Horus getting stopped enough to keep you out of top cut. It's more likely in a YCS than it is at a regional or at a locals. So just be careful. Don't rush out and buy the Horus stuff specifically to compete in a YCS. I think it's a trap. Squiddy's put out a video literally called "This Engine is a Trap." I tend to agree. Okay, I'm not a Horus fan personally, but you guys do you. It just kind of conflicts with what I said earlier, how this format is so diverse, you can try anything. Be smart about it a little bit, okay? All right, on to the last stage of Overlord card, SP Little Knight. I don't have the deck list for every deck in the top 32, but I am willing to bet that every single deck list had SP Little Knight in it. And with that being said, I think it's the most bang for your buck card you can possibly buy right now. And I know a lot of you guys are budget players, and $75, which is the price on today, October 23rd, is a lot of money. But if you can afford one, just go get it. Just go get it now before it spikes up to 100, 120. This is the best card released in years, and it will make literally any deck better. Like I said here, there's 15 different decks in the top 32. All of them are better because of SP Little Knight. Please go out and pick one up if you can afford it. And I would pick it out sooner than later, because it's only going to go up in price from here, in my opinion. So, go ahead and do that. You're going to get a lot of value out of it. You're going to win a lot of games because of it. Even though it's $75, I think that's worth it for this particular card. If you have any sense of competitive, hope to, compete in this format and the next, 5 formats, because realistically, it's not getting reprinted until whatever Megaton it's in, unless Konami sticks it in as an ulti somewhere in an OTS pack or something like that. So, I highly recommend going to pick it up. And then I'll talk about one more card out of Age of Overlord, the Typhon, the whatever it is, the Negazeus. I think that card is also very good. It's probably in a lot of these lists, not all of them, but it can be played in literally any deck. So for a versatile use of your money, I recommend going to get a Typhon as well, because I think that's a lot of good value. And I'm interested to see kind of the metadata from this top 32 and overall of this YCS to see how many people played Typhon specifically, and SP Little Knight for that matter. See how many people got their hands on a copy before coming to this YCS. I think that's about it from the top cut. And then I also just want to touch on easy pickings of topics to talk about, but the Exodia deck that won the feature match in round 4, Jeff Leonard, props to you, man, for bringing that, getting featured, and still coming away with the W. If you guys have not seen it, please go watch the round 4 feature match of YCS Indianapolis. I'm sure you've heard about it. This guy went through a combo to search Exodia, both game 1 and game 3, and pulled off the Exodia. First time that's been done in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! In a decade at least that I've seen. So yeah, go ahead and watch that match. Props to that player for doing that. Yeah, and I think those are my main takeaways and main discussion points from YCS Indy. Very interested to watch YCS Richmond in 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I can't make it to that either, but I will be watching the stream. Hopefully there is one. And yeah, see what kind of meta shifts we get with that YCS, because I think after that YCS, people will kind of adjust to the expected Sinful Spoils Rescue 8s being at the top of the list, top of the pack, and see what kind of balance we get, see if we have a little bit more concentrated top cut, or if it remains as diverse as this YCS Indy top cut was. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. I'll talk to you guys later. Consider subscribing, leaving a like on the channel, and check out the perks of becoming a channel member below, and think about doing that if you want to support me. All of that money is going to go back into cards that I can show on the channel, basically. So yeah, with that being said, we'll catch you guys later. Have a good one. Thanks.